Hello and welcome. I'm Jess Campmans, guided by Equus, and this is your Horse Wisdom Insights for Wednesday, September 15th. And these insights both build on last week and the ones kind of preceding them, as well as moving us into the energy of what is to come. And so this is karma, and I've been sitting here with these guys, or standing here with these guys, just kind of between a space of sitting and standing and questioning what I want to share in this video. And what I keep coming back to is I don't need to know what it is that I want to share, because it's not about what I want to share. It's about the message that needs to come through. And so when I finally relaxed into that, as this happens with almost every video, I mean, sometimes there's words that come to me as I'm ready to press record, and sometimes there's not. And in all of these, in every time I press start, it's really letting go and just trusting that the message that needs to come through will. And so karma really feels like she's a big player, I guess, in the message this week. Player is maybe not the right word, but I think I shared a little bit about the faded spots that this is the second time this has happened. And these spots, she's a black mare, the one that just came up. And this happened too last year around May and June, which there was a fading out of that life force within. And this started happening again, and just showing up here today, she turned around and kind of wanted me to, she was leaning in, her backside leaning into my shoulders, and we were kind of just moving back and forth like that, and it felt really supportive, actually. And then I remembered about the spots, and I kind of reached up and scratched around her tail, and she lifted her tail. And interestingly enough, those spots that faded to white are now, the fading to white has become less faded, and the black, the coloring, the life force is moving back into them, which I know is a reflection of my own connection to that mare. And a huge piece of that is the karma that we hold. And with that, actually goes in response to what I shared about just letting go of the mess, knowing what that needs to be, the message, and just trusting in that it will come through. And so this week, that feels like a really big piece. And we kind of sometimes think of karma, and actually when I named her, I didn't really have an understanding of what karma meant, other than, if we do something bad, we create that as a feedback loop for us to have to deal with again and again. But it's not really bad, it's just an energy. And when we attach a belief system, and again, knowing this and actually being able to move through this in a way of letting it go is, I don't know about you guys, but the hardest thing that I've encountered. And yet it's the soul, it's the process of connecting with our soul, the guiding wisdom of our soul. And our karma is the things that we attach meaning or belief to in response to responses that we elicit in our environment, in our relationships. And then we take on as meaning something about us in that situation. And so karma's full name is karmic spirit. And so I love that as I was standing here, it kind of came to me that when we're not in touch or in communion or connection with spirit, we unknowingly or unintentionally create this karmic pattern that has to cycle around and return to us, so that we have a choice as to how to respond to that. And if this timeline is helping us with anything, it is that. And then Aini, that little one right there, Aini is sacred reciprocity, kind of a paying it forward for the future. So it's like those two this week are really presencing in our lives, playing out in our lives. And when we recognize the energy that is continuing to return to us, for us to unattach ourselves from it, like unattach what it means for us, or as well as an outcome or an expectation that we have. And whether we're doing it consciously or unconsciously, as soon as we become conscious about it, and these guys all showed up, including Coast, we can move into a different, higher perspective in connection to the guidance from our soul. And I want to share another piece on that too. I used to use those words, lost soul, to help people identify with the work I did, and because I at one point felt like a very lost soul. And yet we feel like we're a lost soul because we're actually not, we haven't tapped into the depth of our soul. Within our soul is infinite potential, and we might not ever realize all of that in a lifetime or multiple lifetimes, but it's that process, the journey of moving through all of that to create and build a bigger capacity with that infinite potential, with that potential that exists within each of us when we're connected to soul. And so when we're lost, we're actually, we're trying to navigate things not in relationship to our soul. And that feels very discouraging. That was a huge piece that came through for me this week. I was I don't know if I was on a high, but I felt like things were starting to roll and move, and I was going with the flow. And then all of a sudden one morning I was hit with just this sense of feeling so discouraged about everything. And so that might have only been yesterday or the day before, but recognizing I could have this relationship, where I do have this relationship with the emotion of discouraging and discouragement, meaning to not be able to embody the energy of courage, right? And when we can't embody the energy of courage, that energy continues to show up in my life, for me to recognize that it is a feeling. And if I attach all of these beliefs or things about who I am in relationship to this or in response to this, that I'm still creating an outcome for that emotion of discouragement. Whereas just allowing myself to be in that discouraging energy, which actually, when I finally settled into it later on in the day, it felt draining. And yet, I don't even know how to put words to this, because it's very, again, these are things that are all very intangible. So maybe if I kind of move this story into a bit of a different realm, it might help bring it all back home. Let me just take a moment, because the story was right there, and now it's like it's kind of slid back almost to the wayside. But I feel like this kind of was representative of how this has played out for me. That's funny, it's totally gone. So obviously there's a piece in that too. Now it's front and center. So also within the last couple days, that idea of being, it's not an idea, it's a thing that each one of us have. There's a fear of, if we're this, we all have a fear of something. And that fear that we have is actually what we're here to experience, and move through our relationships. And so once we embody it, we no longer have that fear anymore. But it's that fear of that thing happening, even though it's actually potentially already happened in some way, shape, or form. Even if we're conscious of it or not, that energy is still running at play in our life. And so I realized that I am scared of being known as a healer and everything that means. And then even as I was walking the fence line here this morning, because it was really windy last night, another piece came to me, which is kind of like my message from last week about, I take the blame, was about don't shoot the messenger. Well, and I call myself an equine guided sacred messenger because the messages I'm receiving are sometimes things that are always below surface level, that, when we don't explore beneath the surface, that's where we get entangled with these energies. And when we can, drop below that surface and explore those deeper aspects of self, then we realize and recognize how it is that, and why it is that we're potentially responding in certain ways to the world around us or to others. And so this morning I got, don't shoot the messenger. And so if I'm scared of being shot, then I'm actually not going to deliver the message. And so all of these fears, and then I had really questioned this past week, like, is this even what I'm supposed to be doing? Because it just feels so hard sometimes. And yet, it's the thing I keep coming back to, that when I'm involved in it and engaged in it, time doesn't exist. Like time, I'm outside of time. And that's that piece that when we feel that or recognize that that's happening, because we're working in communion with our soul at that point. Call it healing, call it releasing our attachment to whatever it is that energy is running, and what we've created a belief about in response to that or in relationship to that. I hope that'll kind of make sense. And so kind of to return to that, and what does that mean for us for this week, and for, I guess, where we're going for in the future. And it's funny, everybody has moved out of the space. Those three mares are up there. Einie's the only one behind me, and Coast has now moved forward in front of me. So they're kind of flanking all sides of me except for, and Coast was on my right side, but moving forward. But it's that supporting to help, I want to say push, and it sometimes feels like a push, or that we're being, whatever it is that we're trying to lean into that is behind us, is regrouping this week in a way that is helping move us forward, I guess is a better way to say that. It's not that we're being forced, and it's not that we're being pushed, but we're being presented with an intersection, a choice point that we've come to before, and each time we come to it, we have the access and availability to tap into more of a consciousness around that energy that can actually help release us from it. And that's when we witness miracles, or we witness a whole different reality showing up in our experience because of something that we became conscious of. But becoming conscious of it takes courage and takes the form of a fear that we are embracing rather than running away from. And if you've been watching these videos for a while, I think I spoke about that my daughter was taking some pictures for me, and she had asked me to turn around, but the one picture looks like I'm looking back terrified, running away from my horses. And it was, I think, that and all of these doors that continued to open that helped me finally realize this thing that I love doing, because it's such a big part of me, is also the thing that I'm potentially most terrified of, because when anybody would ask me, well, what's your fear? I didn't have a fear. I didn't fear snakes. I didn't fear water. I didn't fear planes. I didn't fear heights. I didn't have a fear of anything. But slowly this last year has helped me recognize what my fear is, and that is being this and sharing this and doing it all in a way that is unattached to what it means for my personality, I guess, if that makes sense. It's doing it because this is what I came here to embrace as my biggest fear, of sharing these deeper messages and insights that can be very intangible, can raise a lot of hostility in the environment, as it did for me when someone would give me something that I wasn't ready to embrace. My defenses went up. I got really angry, and I was really good at creating another block or shield for myself to protect myself from that. And yet, as soon as we can kind of allow ourselves to become vulnerable with no longer needing to protect ourselves from it, is how, well, it's not really one and then the other. In that experience is the opportunity to embrace whatever it is that we are trying to protect ourselves from, which is that thing that we fear most. So just taking a breath on that, and somehow these videos seem to get longer now, but I hope that there's more in here to help you connect your own dots for maybe why you're experiencing something that's going on in your life, in your current reality, and also to help provide like a practice, a tool, a way to move through the experience in a way that helps create more of a consciousness around it, so you can embody that energy rather than keeping it outside of you, so it has to return to find its way to move through you. And as it moves through you, that's the transformation that happens, and that's when we then witness the world around us responding differently because we've changed. So much love for myself and all of these horses, and Aini has gone up and gathered with them. So it feels like that's a new way to, or that's kind of the pathway to come back home to being part of the greater whole again, I guess, which as a soul we are, and as humanity we are, and yet we feel often very separate from others because we feel separate from these aspects of ourself, that at the basis of it is simply an energy that is asking to be first acknowledged and then embraced and engaged with, and then as you engage with it, you're moving that energy, and as you move it through you and move with it, that's the transformation, that's the change that takes place. So much love for myself, and the sun just decided to kind of come out and shine on these guys. Much love for myself and all of these horses here at Guided by Equus, and I look forward to sharing what else is to come.